All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that absolutely redefined the global landscape of sports. The year is 1958, and the world is about to witness the exact moment Brazil cemented its absolute dominance in international football. But look, we aren't just talking about a team's victory here. We're exploring the rise of a legendary partnership and an unbelievable individual who defied literally every odd imaginable.
I mean, how on earth does a player with severe physical deformities become football's greatest dribbler? It sounds like a total paradox, right? Almost like the plot of some Hollywood underdog movie. But to truly understand the sheer impossibility of this player's journey, we've got to drop ourselves right into the climax of the story, on the biggest stage the world has to offer.
Section 1. The 1958 World Cup Final. The date is June 29, 1958. Let's head into the Rasunda Stadium in Solna, Sweden. It has been raining for 24 hours straight, leaving the pitch wet, slippery, and, supposedly anyway, perfectly suited for the European style of play.
So picture this. You've got a crowd of almost 50,000 people, and the host nation, Sweden, actually strikes first, just 4 minutes in, through Niels' lead home. It was the very first time Brazil had fallen behind in the entire tournament. A lot of people thought the South Americans would just crumble under the pressure and those slick conditions, but instead, they completely dismantled the Swedish defense. Brazil answered with 5 goals, ultimately walking away with a 5-2 victory. But how exactly did they spark that turnaround?
Well, the answer is right there on the right wing. Just 5 minutes after Sweden scored, a Brazilian player named Garrincha took total control. He beat his marker, darted down the flank, and delivered an absolutely flawless cross right around the back of the Swedish defense for Vavá to level the score. And just over 20 minutes later, he did the exact same thing again. I mean, an almost identical play, another flawless cross, and another goal for Vavá. Garrincha's execution on that flank turned an early 1-0 deficit into an unstoppable Brazilian onslaught.
Section 2. The Joy of the People. All right, so now that we've established him as a dominant World Cup champion tearing up the flank in a global final, let's look at the shocking reality of our hero. Because medically speaking, the guy sprinting down that wing barely should have been able to walk.
The physical reality he was dealing with every single day was incredibly stark. Manuel Francisco dos Santos was born with severe congenital deformities. His left leg was bowed severely inward. His right leg was actually 6 centimeters shorter than his left, and it bent outward at the knee, with the foot angled outward as well. Doctors initially took one look at him and deemed that these conditions, which were likely a mix of genetics and childhood illness, would literally prevent him from ever walking properly.
And on top of that, he was born into deep poverty in Pau Grande, which is an industrial town in Rio de Janeiro state. His family lived in a really simple home, no electricity, no running water. Because of his uneven, awkward gait as a kid, his sister gave him the nickname Garrincha, which, if you don't know, is Portuguese for a small, waddling bird, kind of like a wren. But instead of letting this massive physical disadvantage hold him back, it birthed this unyielding resilience in him. He just started playing informal kickabouts in his rural town, completely adapting the game to his own body.
Here is where it gets incredible. He turned what everyone perceived as a weakness into his ultimate weapon. Garrincha mastered what's known as the dribble de corp, a body feint that uses really subtle shifts in weight. Because of that severe leg asymmetry, he naturally possessed this incredibly low center of gravity. His movements were inherently erratic, totally unpredictable. Defenders just couldn't read his path to save their lives. He would shift his weight, totally mislead the opponent, and just explode in the opposite direction. What doctors called a deformity, football recognized as a genius physical advantage.
This totally unpretentious, joyful approach to the game earned him a new, much grander title, Alegria do Povo, or Joy of the People. You see, Garrincha wasn't just playing out there, he was performing. His playful, samba-infused style completely embodied football arte, a really fluid, artistic approach that celebrated joy way over rigid tactics. Coming from rural poverty himself, he resonated so deeply with working-class fans. He became this ultimate underdog folk hero who just brought pure delight to the masses.
Section 3. The Perfect Partnership. So what happens when you pair this artful street baller with, well, the ultimate football prodigy? Going into the 1958 World Cup, Brazil's coach utilized a pioneering 4-2-4 formation, and the whole thing relied on a terrifyingly good attacking duo.
On one side, you have a 17-year-old Pelé. He represents pure athletic, goal-oriented explosiveness and disciplined precision, right? And then on the other side, you've got Garrincha. Total carefree artistry, joyful improvisation, and unpredictable flair. They were absolute polar opposites in their playing styles.
Yet, those exact differences created a perfectly balanced and terrifyingly effective attack. Garrincha would stretch the defense on the wing with his unpredictable dribbling, completely opening up the space that Pelé ruthlessly exploited in the center.
But listen, it is absolutely vital to know that Garrincha was not just Pelé's sidekick. Actually, scratch that, let's prove it. Fast forward 4 years to the 1962 World Cup in Chile. Pelé suffers a groin injury in the second match and is sidelined for the rest of the tournament. Suddenly, the pressure is entirely on Garrincha, and what does he do? He delivers an absolute masterclass. He completely took over the team's attack, scoring 4 goals in the knockout stages, including a spectacular brace against England and another goal against the host nation Chile. He literally carried Brazil to a back-to-back world title, winning the Golden Boot and being recognized as the best player of the entire tournament.
Now think about when they were actually on the pitch together. 40. Keep that number in your head for a second. This represents the total number of matches Garrincha and Pelé played together for the Brazilian national team between 1958 and 1966. Because in those 40 matches where both Garrincha and Pelé took the field, Brazil's record was 36 wins, 4 draws, and 0 losses. Let that sink in for a second. 0. They were literally an undefeated duo. It is a crazy, data-driven testament to how perfectly their contrasting styles fused together to create an invincible force on the global stage.
Section 4. A Legacy of Jogo Bonito. As we head into our final chapter to look at Garrincha's legacy, it's really important to recognize that the unscripted joy he brought to the pitch was in really stark contrast to the profound tragedies of his personal life off of it.
Following those incredible highs, Garrincha's later years were, well, deeply troubled. He struggled immensely with severe alcoholism, a condition that unfortunately ran in his family and had already claimed his father. As his physical health declined in the late 1960s and 70s, he bounced around smaller clubs, dealing with weight gain and chronic injuries. His off-field life was marred by multiple marriages, domestic turbulence, and eventually, severe financial ruin. He ended up living in poverty, relying on handouts from friends. Tragically, in 1983, Garrincha passed away from cirrhosis of the liver. He was only 49 years old.
But despite that steep fall and his very public personal flaws, Brazil absolutely did not forget the joy he gave them. When he passed, the national outpouring of grief was just monumental. Millions of mourners lined the streets, forming this massive funeral procession that started all the way at the iconic Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro and extended all the way back to his humble hometown of Pau Grande. It proved that, for sure, he remained a universally beloved cultural icon, a true symbol of resilience for the working class.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Will the world ever see another player who so perfectly embodies the unscripted joy of the beautiful game? Garrincha was a man who, by all medical accounts, shouldn't even have been able to walk properly, yet he literally danced around the world's greatest defenders. He turned extreme physical adversity into pure, untouchable art. His story is a complex, beautiful, and deeply tragic reminder of the triumph of the human spirit. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.